Hello all, this is Anika coming to you with another tutorial as promised. Please disregard if you hear any background noise. I decided to work outside today because it's such a nice day. However, they just decided to start doing some construction, so you may hear some strange noises in the background. Please try to disregard it. Hopefully I can get them out of this video. I promised that I was going to do a wired ring tutorial. Here I've done one in silver plated wire with the moonstone, and here is one done with copper wire and a faceted Swarvorki crystal. I'll bring it to you a little bit closer. Hopefully it's in focus and you can see it. Let's see. That's the copper one. And here is the moonstone and silver plated. I typically work with sterling silver, but for the tutorial and just to show, I decided to do one in silver plated because it does not tarnish, and I haven't decided whether I want to keep it for myself or give it away as a gift. So let's set that aside. The tools we're going to be using: number one, you need a ring mandrel. I like this one. It's a plastic one, and it has grooves on the opposite side, and it's completely round on the side with the numbering. I have my 6-step bail making pliers that I'll be using, flush cutters, nylon pliers, round nose pliers, long nose pliers. I have two hammers. One is a metal hammer, the other one is a rubber hammer. I have a ring guard. Actually it's a ring holder to keep my wire sturdy. Measuring tape. I took out a few different types of stones to show you that you can, this ring is pretty versatile and you can select whatever stone and size that you want it. We also have a metal block for hammering. I have, for the video purpose, I will be using larger wire so that you can see. This is 16 gauge copper wire and 20 gauge copper wire. For the rings that I previously showed you, I used this one here. I used 18 gauge wire with 22 gauge smaller wire, and this one I used 20 gauge wire and a 30 gauge wire. Basically it's left up to you what size gauge wire you would like to use. That's what makes this ring pretty versatile. It is adjustable. And so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, I moved all of my tools out of the way to give me some working area. First we're going to start off. You need to take your measuring tape, and we're going to measure. You're going to use your largest gauge wire. In this case it's the 16 gauge. You're going to measure 9 inches of wire. Get your 9 inches and cut it off there. You're going to take this wire, fold it in half. Try to get it as even as possible. If you let it cross over and pull it, it helps to make your hole a little smaller. Your hole size would actually depend on what size stone you're going to use. And I decided I'm going to go ahead and use this Swarvorki crystal. It's a Swarvorki Bicone in a size 8mm. I also usually use a rouge rag to go ahead, if I'm using copper or sterling silver, just to buff it up a little. Now, we'll go ahead and see. Now I made it a little bit too tight, so we're going to have to open it up some, because you want to make sure that your stone will fit inside of it. Well, that's about right. Now you can see that it's a little bit curved and crooked. The way I fix that is with my 6-step Bail Making Pliers. And what I do is go ahead and stick it in. For this case, I'm doing let's see, the third from the largest. Just going to pull that. And while we're doing it, as you can see, I'm taking the each side wire and slightly curving it outwards as I pull it together. Do that on both sides. Okay. And try to bring both of your wires back together. This gives you a wide opening, and it comes back narrow. And if you can tell, my wire is a little bit wonky. And to fix that, just take your nylon pliers, because it doesn't damage the wire, and just smooth it out so it's nice and straight. And it doesn't need to be perfect at this point. You can play with it. And it doesn't quite have the curve that I'm looking for, so what I'm going to do is take my round nose pliers and bend it a little bit inward. Do the same thing for the other side. Okay, now this is about the shape that you want. The next thing you're going to do, what I typically do is leave my wire on the spool. That helps to eliminate waste. So I'm going to take the 20 gauge wire, and we're going to start about right here. And what we're going to do, you can do any coil that you would like, but for this particular one, we're going to do what I call a 2-2 reverse style coil. And to start off your coil, you want to at least wrap around twice so that it's nice and sturdy, but leave a small tail for something to grip onto. And this is where, if you don't have one, but this is where it comes in handy, the ring gauge. Take it, clamp it. They come in different styles. This one has a stopper. There are some that you screw. There are quite a few different styles. But if you just clamp it inside, you can bend your tail that way, and it keeps it sturdy where you can go ahead and weave. So we're going to do, this coil that we're going to do is 2 weaves on the bottom. We're going to do 2 weaves around both wires, and then we're going to do 2 weaves around the top wires. And what I typically do, you can take your long nose pliers, or you can take your nylon threads and just push your wires close together. And then here's your second coil. And we're just going to repeat this step all the way down until you have at least about inch or a half inch at the end. So let's just repeat that again. 2 around both, 2 around the bottom, 2 around both, and then 2 around the top. To keep your threads, your wires nice and neat, again, you can use your flush cutters or your long nose pliers. Squeeze them tightly together, and this is what your coil looks like up close. That's the pattern I chose for this selection. Remember, you can choose any style weave that you like, and this particular one is 2 around the bottom, 2 around both, and then 2 around the top, and you just repeat that. I'm going to go off camera to go ahead and finish that, where we have at least a half inch left, and I'll show you where to go from there. Okay, we're back, and just keep in mind that when you use larger gauge wires, it is a little bit more hard to maneuver the wires. The thinner the wire, it is a lot more malleable and easy to maneuver. That's why I typically do the rings in the smaller gauge wire, but some people like the larger gauge wire. They like much sturdier feel, or they like something that's wider around their finger. But here again, here is the weave up close. 2 on the bottom, 2 around both, 2 at the top. We're at the end. We want to go ahead and take our wire cutters. Cut your wire, leaving a little tiny piece of tail, but cut it at the bottom. It's easier to hide it that way. Take your long nose pliers, and you're going to squish that down really tight. Okay, sorry about that interruption. And here we go. To finish it off, you can go ahead and take it off of your ring holder. You're going to also go back up to the top end, and you're going to cut this as well, leaving a tiny bit of tail, so that way you can also squeeze tightly. And what I typically do is squeeze tight and roll, so that way it helps to tuck it, and it prevents from scratching. Sorry about that. Squeeze tight and roll. Okay, here's my weave again. Now this part looks like it's a little curved, and to make it look more uniform, we're going to hammer it, and I usually take the metal hammer first and take the flat side and just hammer it until you have a flat, smooth surface. And I come behind it with the rubber pliers and hammer it. This is just to give it a little bit more stability, and also to flatten it out, to straighten your wire without continuing the flat weave. And this is how it looks. Next, you're going to take, you don't need a lot, but you can take some of your same wire that you just used for weaving, and what you're going to do, you're going to come up from the bottom Actually, we're going to go over the top. Let's start up over the top. We're going to go through and we're going to wrap 3 times. 1, 2, and be sure try not to keep your wire straight, because the more you play with it, the softer it'll become, and you don't want it to break. That's 2 coils, and bring it around one more time. And like I said, it's a lot easier when you're using a smaller gauge wire. And bring it around a 3rd time. You can take your long nose pliers, squish them together so they look nice and even. And we're going to come up one more time, but we're not going to do a complete wrap this time. Pull it tight. And the wire got a little bit out of place and bent there. So what we do to fix that, just take your nylon pliers and pull it a couple times so it's nice and straight, nice and smooth. Go ahead and slide your stone on. Okay. You want to bring it up, and then to make it uniform, I always go back down through. And I try to get my nails nice and pretty for the video, but bear in mind when you're doing wire weaving, if you have long nails, you won't have long nails once you're finished. Wire weaving does take a lot, it puts a lot of stress on your nails. And I actually broke a nail doing this. So, and then we come back around and you're going to coil around 3 times to make it nice and uniform, so it can look the same as the other side. If you have a little bit of trouble with pulling it, you can actually, let's go ahead and use a nylon so it doesn't dent the wire, but pull it tight. And it's easy if you pull it downward, and you can actually wiggle back and forth, and that also brings it closer. There we go. That's 1, 2. Gotta use the pliers again. Squish it down. And 3. And as I said before, it's not going to be as difficult when you use a thinner wire because it's a lot more malleable. So what we do, we have it here. It may not look flush as you want it with the larger wire, but you can play around with it until your stone lays diagonal or either side by side. You can come back and squeeze those together, and we're going to cut the back. We're going to cut it from the rear again, same method. I'm going to do both sides at the same time. Same method as before. Flush cutters, pulling it close. Take your long nose pliers, squeeze and turn, squeeze and turn. You can straighten them out, push your coils together, do the opposite side, squeeze and turn, squeeze and turn. Squeeze them all together and it's nice and flush. Now your ring looks kind of crazy here. It doesn't look like much of anything, but you can straighten it out just like this. You can take and run your nylon threads across it, and As you can tell, my ends are not quite flush together. I'm going to go ahead and clip them together so that they are the same length. I'm going to take the round nose pliers, hold it very close to the end, grip it, and start to curve. You're going to bring it all the way around once, and then bring it around a second time. And don't worry if it doesn't lay flat, because you're going to go back and fix that. And you're going to bring it all the way around like this. Come back with your nylon threads, nylon pliers, and squeeze it until it's flat. And there's your spiral. Repeat the same thing on the other side. And what I always like to do, just for added design, I usually take one side and leave it a little bit longer. From the other side, just slightly longer. Go ahead and straighten your ring, and this is what you'll have. We'll come and take the ring mandrel. This is going to be, I'm going to start it out as a size, maybe a size 9, and it can be adjusted down to a 7 at most. Start here, and I try to put the stone in the groove. That's where it comes in handy. It helps you to hold it. And you're going to bring it around like this. Bring it all the way around like this, and flatten it out. Okay, take it off the mandrel and take your flat nose pliers. You can bring this part down a little bit closer. And there you have it, your finished ring. It can be made adjustable, as I said. All you do is squeeze. If you want it smaller, open it up if you want it larger. Thank you for joining me. If you like what you've seen, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and you can look at the little bell up in the top right hand corner. If you click that bell, it will send you notifications every time I upload a video. Thank you. Talk to you next time.